It's very easy to complain about Destiny 2's PvP mode, the Crucible, and believe me, there are plenty of things to complain about. However, rather than getting bogged down whining about it, I decided to take as objective a look as I can at these problems and come up with ways Bungie might be able to reinvigorate the players to jump into the Crucible more regularly. As we all know at this point, player population is at an all-time low for Destiny 2. There is no section of the game this hurts more than PvP, as matchmaking times are longer and you regularly end up matching the same players and of course the increased likelihood of running into cheaters. So what's the first step in making the Crucible better without simply saying get rid of cheaters or get rid of X, Y or Z? Let's take a look at the loot pool for the Crucible. Not a whole lot going on here. Some of these weapons are relatively okay for PvP, some are okay for PvE, but none of them stand out or have any real identity. The thing is, that's kind of the case for all of the ritual loot pools. Vanguard and Gambit weapons don't stand out that much except for Adept Nightfall weapons, and one or two Gambit weapons players farm for good performance in PvP, like Bygones with High Ground earlier this episode, before Bungie nerfed High Ground all the way into the ground. The same could be said for the armor sets. It was a gripe from many that Lightfall didn't launch with new armor sets for the ritual playlists, like the Witch Queen did, and what we got in Final Shape was pretty similar aesthetically. This is actually an issue Destiny 1 had as well, but let's look at this objectively. The majority of weapons across the entire game match this description. They fill out the options for what you could use across all sources and all content, but don't grant much in the way of exceptional performance. The way you get the best weapons from ritual playlists is by doing harder content, Nightfalls for Vanguard and competitive modes for Crucible. So let's look at the competitive loot instead. And now we can see, these weapons are all exceptional for PvP compared to the standard loot pool. Each has an identity and stands out as being the best or close to the best in slot for what it does. Rose is not the most powerful hand cannon when compared to Hawkmoon or Ace of Spades, but its forgiving recoil and ease of use make it a versatile and ubiquitous PvP hand cannon that nearly anyone can pick up without much practice. Mercurial Overreach is the best in-slot PvP sniper rifle, with Macabre, the Festival of the Lost Sniper, being its only real competitor other than Cloud Strike. Snapshot and Opening Shot make it a uniquely easy to use sniper rifle inside the Crucible. Belisarius D is arguably the worst weapon from the competitive loot pool, given that aggressive burst pulses aren't the best archetype, but this thing has insane range and stock options that make it easy to handle. Riposte, the only lightweight auto rifle in the game, is so ridiculously easy to use that I am often surprised I get killed when fighting pulse rifles or hand cannons at mid-range. Its only downside is its range, since despite being a 720 RPM, with the right perks it pretty much has no recoil. Episode Revenant brought a long-awaited stasis precision frame shotgun, Deadlock, and it quickly stood out as being best in slot for PvP shotguns, allowing players to swap out Matador for an energy primary instead, granting more freedom for PvP build crafting. I have only good things to say about all of these weapons. Each one is unique, each feels great to use, and each one is designed with PvP in mind. The issue I have is the RNG surrounding how you earn them. Let me explain. Crucible Divisions starts you off each season as untested. Complete 7 matches to get assigned your rank and get a drop of the current weapon. On your other characters, complete 3 matches to get a total of 3 drops. Every week for the remainder of the season, you do 3 matches on each character to get 3 total drops per week, and pray for RNG to give you what you're looking for. If you don't get what you want out of all of those drops, the following season will still allow you to get it with legacy focusing at Lord Shaxx, a much welcome feature. However, relying on 3 random drops each week makes it feel like wasted effort when you can't farm for it and seemingly never get the 5 out of 5 roll you want. But we also have to balance out the way this reward is earned, rather than just throwing more guns at the player simply for showing up. So here's what I suggest. Once a player ranks up into the next division for the first time in a season, they gain a drop of the weapon. So for Copper to Bronze, Bronze to Silver, Platinum to Adept, etc. This means low skill players are incentivized to climb, since they should more frequently get drops of the competitive weapon than high skill players, given the relative proximity of each rank in terms of difficulty. Higher skill players will still get those one-time rewards for ranking up, but to balance out how difficult that is at Adept and Ascendant ranks, allow those players to farm them over time. All players who are Adept and above would be granted a 50% chance of getting a drop for every 3rd win, and a 100% chance upon their 6th win, at which time the reward win counter will reset. This means on average, assuming a 50% win rate, they will get a weapon drop every 12 matches. As anyone who plays competitive regularly will know, that's a lot of effort to commit, but it's a chance to farm for the god roll they so desperately want through nothing more than playing the game at their rank, which is already hard enough. Additionally, Adept players' rewards will have a 50% chance of getting double perks in the 3rd column, with Ascendant players having it guaranteed. This system altogether would grant more frequent drops in the lower skill tiers without them being farmable, and farmable drops in the higher tiers with the rewards themselves being better to account for the increased competition in those ranks. As for the armor drops, Competitive Divisions already offers Artifice versions of Legacy armor with high stat rolls, as well as Ascendant materials. Perhaps reprising more Destiny 1 armor sets with glows would be suitable as competitive rewards for higher ranks. Oh, I'm out of breath, man. Making videos is hard. The next point of discussion for Competitive Divisions is the map pool. As it stands, the map pool is kind of odd for this mode, at least to my reckoning. It's a 3v3 mode, and yet the maps are in the larger category with the exception of some, like Anomaly. But to regularly get matches on Radiant Cliffs, Widow's Court and Rusted Lands for a 3v3 game mode can be frustrating, because the larger the map, the slower the game, and Crucible games thrive when action is fast-paced. It always has. I understand that this conversation also has to include the topic of game modes, since having a tiny map with control points if the game mode is collision would result in a very hectic experience, so some maps do need to be a bit larger to grant the appropriate experience for the game mode. But in all honesty, the best solution would be map voting, something players have wanted for a very long time. The game offers 3 maps, players vote. In the event of a tied vote, the game randomizes between the 2 tied maps and the players load in. The game mode is predetermined. Some Bungie developers and map designers may gripe over their maps not getting selected, but let's be honest here, do you really want to force players to play on maps they don't like? Disjunction isn't liked, nor is Vostok, so having them forced into the playlist just because they need to pad the map pool isn't a good excuse. The 3 most recent maps from the Into the Light event are great additions all around, and should appear more in the playlist than they do. What I'm going to say next may already be implemented by Bungie, I am just unsure, so a bit of a disclaimer here about that. For larger maps, have them weighted to play Collision, and for smaller maps, weight them to play Clash. Pretty straightforward. But honestly, what the Divisions really needs is more modes and better modes. Collision can feel horrible when the next control point spawns in favour of the team currently holding the point. Clash can feel hectic and unbalanced due to split spawns for teammates on larger maps. So how do we address it? Supremacy is a fun game mode in 6v6 but would really be drawn out in 3v3 since enemies would reliably be able to claim downed allies' crests before you can grab them, incentivizing slower play. Dominion we want to keep for trials so it retains its identity. Survival then? Each team has limited respawn tokens, whichever team is left standing either at the end of a round or by wiping the enemy team once they have no tokens left will win. This round plays itself well into faster play at the beginning but slower play towards the end of a round, since the team with more tokens will slow down to draw out the timer. Since the rounds tend to take longer, having a low win score would be better, or just have a really large pool of respawn tokens to make it feel more like Clash without the safety net. It's a contender, Elimination, a mode with no revives incentivizing fast-paced, team-oriented gameplay, since the only way to win the round is to eliminate the enemy team. Hiding doesn't get you anywhere. Getting knocked out is a huge detriment, while securing a trade keeps the match interesting. Another contender. Countdown was in the competitive playlist before, but it was largely disliked because of how long it took to finish a match, and how high the win score was. With shorter rounds and a best of 5 win condition, it may be a contender again, but ultimately the game mode may just be unpopular for competitive play. Rift was largely disliked by most players as a competitive game mode, so I won't even entertain bringing it back into this playlist. Relic, Mayhem, and Scorched occupy the same type of party game mode, not suitable for a competitive ranked playlist. Or is something completely new required to keep things interesting? The final thing I'll say is, yes, the game's matchmaker and protection from cheaters needs to be made better, but ultimately the game's core is still incredibly fun. I think focusing too much on the negatives within the community becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Anyone who has played with me or watched any of my streams will know I certainly get frustrated, but it's largely down to how much I hate losing and even more how I hate performing badly than it is with the game itself. And so, I'd rather provide ideas for what I'd like to be able to see added or changed than whine and say the game is dead. That sentiment is widely spread by larger content creators and carried by their followers throughout the community. So if you still enjoy Destiny 2, leave a comment down below with what you think would be a good addition to the Crucible to encourage new players to stick around for one of the most unique PvP experiences in all of gaming. Thank you for watching, and take care, Guardians.